right, well, let's get going. Welcome to our panel, Lasting Connections, Future Impact. This is a panel discussion to talk about the legacy of the Global Libraries Program from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as seen through the eyes of former grantees and partners and current and always library transformers. I'm Deborah Jacobs. I was the director of the Global Libraries Program until it ended at the end of 2018. And now I consider myself a librarian who is spending her time exploring and discovering. And I'm also an urban farmer with a farm called Dirtbox Farm. And I feed my neighbors and friends and family. We're joined today by my great colleague and friend, Jessica Dorr, as well as 6 of our grantees from around the world. We're hoping that you'll use the chat session, and this is the 3rd day of the conference, so people know it's good to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, and Jessica will be monitoring the chat. So now that you know that, I would like each of our panelists to introduce themselves briefly, as I did, and so I'll start with Jacek.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jacek Królikowski. I'm president of the Society Development Foundation that has been implementing library development program for almost 12 years. First 7 years, program was funded mainly by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in the frame of global libraries. In the last years, we are funded mainly by Polish American Freedom Foundation and other public and private donors. Thank you.
And now it's your time, Jessica.
Oh, we lost Deborah. Okay. Deborah, already. Okay, Christina.
So I'm Cristina Ramirez, and I was involved in the Global Libraries Program in Latvia in the capacity of impact assessment specialist. And right now I'm with IFLA for 4 years already, taking care of the Library Map of the World project. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting.
Yes. Yes, Anka, you get to now be a participant.
So should I go?
Yeah.
Yes, I get to be a participant today, so I am pretty thrilled about this. I'm Anka Rădanu from Romania. I used to work in Biblionet program, which was the global libraries initiative in Romania, and now I work for Progress Foundation, who organizes Occupy Library.
And Violetta.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Violetta Bănescu. I used to work with global libraries in Moldova, or also known as Novateca, for 6 years. I'm glad to be part of this panel, although I continue to work with ARIX, not in the library area anymore, but I'm still continuing to be a library fan, lover, and supporter.
Great. Great. Ramunia.
Hi, my name is Ramunia Petruchovaite, and I was supervising Project Libraries for Innovation in Lithuania that was implemented in 2007, 2012, and it was supported by a grant from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And currently I am working at IFO, International NGO, Electronic Information for Libraries, Public Library Innovation Program, where we are trying to spark innovation in public libraries, developing and transition economy countries. And this program is also supported by the grant of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Great, thank you, Ramunia. And one of our panelists will be here soon. She's finding the room, yeah? Anka?
Yes, I'm doing my best, you know.
Jessica, I know you've made some comments about what people should do, but you want to introduce yourself and
Oh, sure. I'm Jessica Dorr, and I am thrilled to have so many people coming from Europe, from Mexico, from India. It's such a great group, and yes, very good vibes, David. I totally agree. My role in this will be to watch the chat and to help our panelists by making sure that we are answering your questions. So if you have any questions for the panelists as they're talking, I'm going to be facilitating getting those questions to the group. Oh, hi, Cecil. This is very, very exciting. I will try not to just say hi to everybody, but please know I am watching and helping to make sure that this really is a discussion. So thank you.
Yes. I see we have some people that we've had lasting connections with from Global Libraries in our chat. So thank you all for introducing yourselves. We'll jump into Marie when she gets here. I think likely all of you have been touched by Global Libraries, even if you weren't directly a grantee or partner of us, because our funding has spread throughout the world. But 2 years ago, that program ended, and we have been keeping in touch with each other and learning from each other still.
Yep.
We a few months ago, I was asked, and then I asked Jessica to join me to write a chapter for to write a chapter. Marie, Marie, introduce yourself.
Hi guys, I don't know, Hopin hates me. That's just how it is. Hi, my name is Marie Ostergard. I'm a library director in Aarhus Public Libraries in Denmark. And I was part of the INELI 2 international cohort. And since I don't know what you other guys said, I'm just going to stop the introduction there.
That's perfect.
But you also worked and created the Design Thinking Handbook, which has been one of...
I don't want to take credit for doing that myself, but yes, in Aarhus, we did that together with Chicago Public Libraries due to a grant from the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation. So we've been working for a long time. We also created the Next Library Conference that I know so many of you guys from as well. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Marie. So I was saying that a few months ago, Jessica and I started writing a chapter for a book that was honoring our friend Ton van Bloemeren, who was retiring from the Utrecht Public Library. And of course, we decided we needed to write about global libraries and some of the impact. And we spent delicious, delightful time reconnecting on Skype or meetings and any tool we could use to connect and find out first how everybody's doing, but also to find out what they think has been the impact of global libraries. And when we were done with that, we were so struck by two themes that kept coming up. And one was that people have seen a mind shift, a mind change for librarians, that they are not looking at things the same way. I learned many years ago, I saw a presentation from someone who's become a good friend of mine, Gertrude from Uganda, and she talked about how librarians wring their hands and complain and say, we don't have enough money, nobody loves us. And that mind shift we know has changed in many African countries, but I'm hearing it's changing around the world. But we also heard how important the network was. I sit here and I look at it and just on this stage, and then when I look to the side, even though I shouldn't at the chats, this is a community of friends and a network of people that I want to be involved with. And I think that is what has most encouraged us. Jessica and I believe, and the former employees, the former program officers of the Global Libraries program also believe that stronger, better connected librarians have now become the true legacy of the Global Libraries program. And for us, it's just been a delight to see it. And we're going to then talk with this in mind about two themes. The first is the legacy of global libraries as an international network of people committed to transforming libraries. And the second is how global libraries help catalyze a permanent shift in the mindset of librarians. Jessica will be monitoring the chat, as we said at the beginning, and do continue to tell us where you're from, but also to begin asking your questions. She will interrupt us with burning questions so that we aren't just 7 people, or 8, 3, 6, 8 people talking at you, but you're talking with us and you'll make us stronger. So the first question on mindset is, and Marie, if you would start for us, all of you have worked hard to help shift the mindset of library staff. And I want to ask you to share where you have seen the impact of that shift.
Thanks, and thank you for this opportunity. I love that you say how we helped shift the mind shift with staff, because obviously it's not something that I or anyone in this panel have done alone. But I would say that one of the biggest mind shift I've seen over the past years in Aarhus is a trained, you can say, a trained curiosity that the design thinking has helped with that. The whole our very strong focus on trying and allowing ourselves to fail is all part of the same thing that makes us. It actually helps us create an explosion of ideas, because we're not afraid to trip and fall in creating new ideas. And I think that's probably the biggest mind shift change that's been going on for the past 10 years in Aarhus. And I hope that I've helped push that along as well.
Thank you, Marie. I remember at one of my early Next libraries that you had everybody say, yes, I made a mistake. And to me, I'm so glad you brought that up first, because too many people are afraid to fail. And how else do we learn? Christine, what would you like to share?
Yeah, if I think about librarians in Latvia, so I think that the biggest impact is that ability to always keep that openness of the mind. So that being ready that the new change will come, so that it's a process that's rolling on and it will never stop. So, and I think it's credible also because Global Libraries program was finalized in Latvia in 2013, and it's amazing to see how library field and librarians are still open to even more new ideas and being engaged in making change happen in their communities, starting from themselves, but also changing everybody around them.
Which is incredible. And you're also seeing probably that, maybe you could talk about that next when we, as you're training people to write stories. Anka, you've talked about how you're seeing a whole second generation or wave of librarians who are being inspired by librarians whose minds have shifted.
Yes, I actually had the very good, the honor to be one of the organizers of the summer school for young librarians, organized by the association, the Library Association in Romania. And what I saw there was like, wow, it's a different type of librarian, because I think that in Romania we were successful with two things, and they were very good. I mean, we had people that were in their heart innovators, but they needed a chance to try things, and those flew, they were like, and you can see them everywhere. They get awards from Eiffel, they get, that kind of recognition because they are truly exceptional. But the biggest and more difficult victory of Biblionet was to change the perspective of what minimum standards of library is. So, which is a very big step in such a in a country and in a field like librarianship, and in a country like Romania. So what we saw now, it's young librarians that are fresh, good, open already. You just want to work with already. So I would say that was I was lucky enough to actually see this. 5 years after. So,
That's incredible. I just want to mention that Cecil has put up a link to design thinking. Jessica, do you want to, I see you've responded to some of that just to make sure.
Yeah, so there's a link in the chat to the design thinking toolkit that was created with the Aarhus Public Library and the Chicago Public Library. And Cecil points out that it's been translated into 15 different languages right now.
Wow, and still counting. Jacek, you were a trainer, and while you worked in Poland, you were really looking across all the global libraries country with your with your team of partners across the world. What have you seen in the world and in Poland that has changed?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I have to say that in case of Polish librarians, this change in mindset is not only my opinion. It's also something that librarians are aware of, because we've been conducting recently a research assessing the library development program after 10 years. Some of the results are kind of embarrassing for us because they are close to the results of so-called free election in Belarus, because it's like 97% of librarians assess this program as a good or very good, and 89% said that it changed the libraries and better, and 99% would recommend this program to other librarians. But what I want to say is that they are aware of why it was so important. Exactly what they say. It's not computers, it's not internet, not these things that seems to be very important for them at the beginning of the program, but the way they think about the library, and also the way how the local community thinks about the library and local government. Just one short quotation from the interviews. Many times they said something like, library development program was a cathartic, eye-opening experience, completely altering perception of one's as a librarian and the library as an institution. And that change happened when they achieved first results, when they offered new services, and first of all, when they felt self-confident and ready to present results of the achievements to the local authority in the frame of advocacy, for example.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Ramunia, I remember very early when I met you 12 years ago, and you talked about how the librarians, when they needed to do political action, all they wanted to do was write a letter. And now how you've seen the change, and also you're seeing changes in Africa. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yes, I mean, maybe librarians are writing letters to Ministry of Culture till now, but I'm not there, so I don't know. But I think, every evening now through TV, I see the ad going on in Lithuania where that calls people, especially senior people, to come to libraries for advanced ICT courses. And it has been like, after how many? 8 years since we closed the program. So it's still going. And I think librarians are there to help people with all kinds of consultations, how they can use mobile phone in this, COVID-19 situation and so on. But the thing that I think is powerful is that, we have put systematic change in the place. Mm-hmm. Like the digital agenda of Lithuania which is long-term plan for ICT development in Lithuania. It recognizes public library network as the main infrastructure for public access in our country. And and when you are part of this network, it's powerful, you cannot change your mind. And at the same time, there's, of course, funding mechanism there. And also you should be accountable for what you do in this area. So I think when you are doing national-wide programs, it's very important to think not only about this change that happens, here locally, but also what should be secured. I mean, some secure mechanism that supports the network supports the network, keep this recognition and so on. And with IFL, of course, now we are working in Africa most of the time with the public libraries. Our project scales, of course, are small, and we mainly focus on capacity building. I think this what changed mindset most of the time.
Yeah. Violetta, someone came up with talking about made a note, I just saw Novateka through the corner of my eye, but can you talk a little bit about what you've seen and now you see in your continued work, even if it's not libraries?
And we also have seen in the chat that someone was commenting that it helped a lot when they have been trained on how to use the digital device that they have been provided, but along with the equipment that librarians in Moldova have been provided via the Novateka program, I think that the mind shift came when librarians have internalized their new role and they can do more, they can achieve more, and that people are listening to them. Because one of the mission or one of the purposes of Novateka program was really to support librarians to become community leaders. And when they have reached that status and they have internalized that I can be a leader, then this mind shift has changed. And it's very rewarding to see that beside being a community leader, 2 years later, once Novateka program ended, they are community trendsetter. They come with various initiatives and programs and supporting local public authorities and users.
That is such a great point you're making about community leaders and community trendsetters, and that's huge. And maybe if Occupy thinks this is an interesting enough panel and they invite us back in 2 years, we can start telling stories about mayors of cities and village chiefs that were with the program and that are librarians. Jessica, is there anything that's come up that any questions from any of the people here?
We don't have any questions yet, so please, if you are thinking that you might want to ask a question of our panelists, we will pass that along. But we do have a lot of enthusiasm for the toolkit, the design thinking toolkit, and particularly the number of languages it's been translated into.
Great. And I also want to remind people that if you have a question just for one of us, you can send a private message to us, and we will definitely get back to you. That's our commitment to you. So let's move on, and I'm not going to call on each of you. I'd really love to have this maybe be a bit of a conversation, because the next question about mindset is, what advice do you have for others who are trying to shift the mindset of library staff, and what has worked for you? And so, but Christine, I'm going to ask you to start, because I know you're working hand in hand, helping librarians learn how to write the stories that show the impact of the Sustainable Development Goals for the library map of the world. So if you could start, and then if others could just jump in, and as well as any questions.
Yes. Well, instead of talking about the library map, I still want to talk about Latvians. Because I've been thinking about this, like, what is it that changed you? And I actually thought, I agree with what Ramona says about the systemic change and the big national change and things like that. But you should know, well, in Latvia, like 70% of libraries are single staff. So, and what came with the global libraries was an enormous change for anyone. And then I think something that we did was quite important also to like, in order to make them the leaders in the community, and they need to be empowered. And for me, I think it starts at the individual level. So, and something that Latvians did in their program before they even started to train any other things was they had a workshop of how to be happy during the time of change.
Yes.
And I think that is an important piece when it comes to making someone a change agent, is that we really feel empowered ourselves to be able to really make that change. And well, I don't know. And for us also, it was, the Latvian library system is very centralized, and it's very different from many other countries. So at the time when we had program where we had more than 900 public libraries, with about 30 of them being regional level with a consultative function to other smaller libraries. And I think an important thing when it comes to mindset shift and bringing change to place is also where the message comes from. And the important thing is that everybody is involved. So we talk together, librarians, with local government leaders, with ministry representatives, with other non-governmental organizations, so that everyone is aware of what is coming and what is there for us as individuals, for our communities, but also for the system change as such. And I must say that when I started, I was a baby myself.
Yes.
In 2007, I did not know nothing about what impact means, how to plan for it, or what is it gonna be. And that support that I had from the network to change my mindset was very important for that. And then that just you can only role model like together if you have support. So, and I think that's what we tried to do in Latvia, to role model and show by example, lead by inspiration. And that's kind of the same thing that I'm bringing now to the library map. And each story that you read from some library is a learning experience, not only for me to learn about the program, but also for the librarian on another side. And that through this writing the story process, you can learn something that makes you stronger.
You know, I love that you said that about being a baby. I mean, I remember the first time I met all of you, actually, and you were really babies. Jacek was never a baby. He was always a grown-up. I think very serious. But Marie, I think you were about 14 when I first met you at the library camp. Jessica, you said there's some questions out there.
Well, we and I think I'd love the panel to weigh in on this. This is coming from a comment that Alejandra made about, and I've heard this, and I'd love you guys to comment on it. When you're thinking about that mindset shift, how did you guys deal with the resistance from librarians who would say, I hear what you're talking about, but that's not the role of the library. That's not the purpose of the library. A library is about maybe books and reading and culture. How did you guys address that? And it sounds like Marie's got it, and Anka and Jacek. All right, you guys have some good answers and good advice for our listeners.
Well, it's just I noticed that also Kirsty Crawford was asking some of the same things, and I don't want to comment on people not wanting to change, but I can share what I think helped our big change was it was the focusing on the users and beginning to work intensely and intently on in networks, both locally, nationally, and not least internationally. And I think what happened was, so we began many years ago working on how could we expand the networking and international network with different kinds of conference formats, which ended up as being Next Library. And alongside that, we were expanding on working with partners in our whole community to grow our services to the benefit of users. And for a long time, we had been looking at the Next Library as a movement of many different ways of going, of touching the library from different angles and bringing people together in a very organic form where you actually work together. And at one point, I was having a conversation. I think it was with David Lankes. I was talking about this, and I said, "Well, it's not just Next Library. It's the library in itself is a movement." And I think if you begin to think about that and work with that, and think about the library as a not fixed and defined frame of organization or services, but more as an organic form that gets influenced by many different parts of society and communities and networks, and embrace that and try and share that and ask your staff to go out and find where do you find inspiration? Who could you work with to grow your own minds or grow the libraries in whatever sense you in the beginning believe it should grow? Then we slowly begin to look at the world as part of the library and not the library as one side and the rest of the world on the other. And I think that mind shift has been extremely important in our continuous growth in Aarhus.
Great. Violetta, I saw that you wanted to say something.
Yeah, as part of that helped librarians to get aware of the new role that they might have. It's also, along with what has been mentioned by colleagues, it was due to exposure to various types of experiences and capacity building initiatives, but organized in a different and innovative way, and exposure to various role models, and as well as leaders that have been already there and those that have seen the benefit, like of a librarian being a different librarian, being a leader. So this is why, for example, looking at our panel participants, I can see that to Poland and to Latvia and to the United States and so on in various stages of Novateka program implementation, and that really helped them along with they were getting to see different librarians and to see how they can do in different way things. So I guess that exposure is really important because you can find new ideas, you can find people to communicate with, to interact with, as well as you can find inspiration.
Yes, thank you. Rumunia, I can tell there's movement happening. You want to talk?
Yes.
And Jacek, yeah.
So I agree with other people on the panel, and I just want to share one moment from Libraries for Innovation team. We were struggling with really some resistance from librarians, or as we perceived, this like slow change. And what happens in the projects, it's usually if you are responsible for managing the project, you focus on those hard deliverables of the project. Don't pay attention to the people. And we had this like some kind of training where we try to solve this problem or understand it better within the team. And we were like making picture how we see situation, and one of the pictures that came from Donatus, our team member, was like snail, and our team like pushing this snail, and then it was for us a revelation that though we are such smart people, but we understand that other people are in different situations and they need some time and they have their natural pace to change. And what we can do is really walk with them instead of, pushing them to do something
nice.
don't understand. And I think that's helped and is helping me also now when we are developing programs in Africa and also other countries where IFL Public Library Innovation Program work. It's just, some kind of, you need to be humble and to understand that you cannot change if people don't get opportunities. So you just create opportunities for them, support them in changing and walk with them, side by side instead of trying to push.
Rumunia, that is so fabulous, and it speaks to why humble people like you and Christine, who's worked with you in Africa, and Ugnia and Susan Schneer, you're all humble people, and that walking next to is really fabulous. I know Jacek wants to say something, but Jessica, I know some questions have been coming up.
Yeah, why don't we go Jacek's? Jacek's been waiting patiently, and after him, then I'll give you an update on some of the comments from the chat.
Okay.
Okay, so referring to this kind of resistance and voices that library is mainly about books, I think it's quite natural in any process of change, and I think that's what is indispensable for the making this process smoother is mutual respect and trust. So that's absolutely basic. So we have to show that we have a good intention, that we respect what they did already, and like invite them for change. And we in a few years we reached the level when we proposed something like let's say advocacy, they said, okay, we don't know what is advocacy, but if you propose it, let's go for it. Then we were like exactly the same, like in case of Latvia, we were a newly set up foundation to run the program. So we had to introduce to the library circles, and we very fast set up a library advisory group. So we had involvement of the stakeholders. Then what was especially important that we didn't impose any specific model of the library. We just said there are some different opportunities, and you have to select based on the needs of your community and what you think is right. And the last important element is networking. It's make people like speak about the process they are in. We have very successful support groups for library directors, for example. So that's very, very important. And at the end, I would say that I'm very proud of Polish librarians because among all institutions that I know, public institutions, they are most open for change. They are constantly ready for change. They are opposite to schools, for example. They are really now they're thinking about the library after COVID. They are aware that they don't know everything. They look for support. They look for networking. Yeah, so that's basically my approach to the change.
Thank you very much. Jessica, did you want to jump in?
So I'll jump in here because we have a great string going in the chat, and I'm going to say that there's two themes in it. One of them is just around, I think, Jacek, what you were talking about with advocacy and helping librarians be comfortable advocating at the local level to meet with community leaders and engage. So any more examples of how you did that, I think would be helpful for our audience. And then a specific question on library legislation, and how does sort of that, the local advocacy then help or relate to how you could actually change national policies? And then particularly, what do you do when you're in an administration that isn't supportive of libraries? I think would be really helpful, because I know a lot of you have dealt with that as well. Maybe you started work with a supportive administration, but now you're having trouble with a different administration that comes in, and how are you focused on that?
Marie?
Yeah, no, I've been following the string of conversation, and I see Jorge Prado talking about how they always in Brazil invite the politicians for their large conferences, and I think that's a really good point. We do that too in Denmark, and we can see how that really benefits libraries. I even and some other libraries for Denmark try to get our politicians to come to IFLA, and not only to hear the presentation, but also to make sure that they meet other libraries that are doing great work, so that they can see what libraries can actually be. So I think that attempt to have a close connection and drag politicians into what it is that we're doing is extremely essential for whatever it is that we want to achieve. So I think that's really a good approach.
Marie, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I was thinking about how you and Rolf before you would bring your politicians to the Congress, and how we had a very large call to action from your politicians to have more public officials at the Congress. And now that IFLA has announced that next year's Congress is going to be virtual, I think it's a real opportunity, to get back to your politicians' call to action, to to invite or to have something that works for politicians without having to travel, but to be having you by the side. So just a good practice maybe we can encourage, because I'm seeing in the corner of my eye that it really works to bring people to events. Other people, Jacek, wasn't some legislation changed in Poland by the Library Association, or they tried anyway?
Yes, they tried very hard, but then happened, what's happened, it's the same what happened in many other countries. We are now, I'm very sad to say that, but we are in a non-strategic situation. We are in the situation when the government is dividing people, is ruling through the conflict, is not proposing any strategies. And it's really very sad, but at this moment, what we can do is, what is possible is only on the local and regional level. Because then, to develop a strategy means that you bring people together, all stakeholders, you think what are the most, the best development goals, you agree on that, and then you mobilize people to realize these goals. So in Poland, currently, it's impossible because half of the society is out of any strategic reflection or whatever, and there is no strategy is not perceived as a political tool, but it's for change, because politics is now about something that will happen tomorrow. So that's what, and yeah, I don't know how it's in other countries,
well,
but in Poland now it's impossible.
Yeah, Anka, you are patient.
Yes, I am patient. Can you imagine that? So I also saw the comment, and I want to say that in Romania, for example, we have a library bill since 2001, but nobody, it was not, put into practice. So sometimes even having a law, good or bad, cannot help you if you do not do grassroots change librarians' minds about what they are. Because otherwise we can have the tools, but you don't have the energy to put, for us it always worked. It worked from the small libraries going up in the big libraries. The change was easier to accept in small communities where there was distrust between the librarian and the community, and the pressure went that way. So sometimes having a policy accepted nationally doesn't help with addressing community issues. That was our experience, and that's what I wanted to.
So Christine and Ramunia both have something. Let's listen to what you have to say, and we're already transitioning into talking about networking, so it'll be a natural switch. So quick, Christine, tell.
Well, I have a pile of things to tell, but I'll just mention three and quickly. for the legislation, Latvians has very developed library law with a regulative document covering every aspect of the library work, starting from collection development, qualifications of librarians, and etc. But for that, I also want to just mention now, and it's an advertisement. On the library map of the world, there is this new section called countries, and which has for each country a space where we list library legislation and policies with links to full text documents. So just an invitation to go online and explore, because there are other countries with links to legislation where you can kind of learn. And the third thing I wanted to mention also is about involving policymakers and stakeholders. And what Latvians did also during the program implementation, and still continue do on occasions, is that when there is a library congress or the festival or the event, on-site event that they organized for the global library specifically, because we concluded agreements with all the municipality leaders, we made a special event for them to not only talk about things that we as librarians need to talk, but also to recognize their investments into the libraries. And I think it's important to keep that relationship close and also have those events together. That was it.
Thank you, Christine. And I want to hear the rest of your your list of things. But could you put up a link? I don't know if anybody from
Yes,
IFLA is here, but will you do that for Romania? You had something, and Jessica says we have some questions.
Yeah, I just agree with the who said that you don't change legislation before making changes in real life.
Yeah.
So because it takes time to change legislation. And for example, we got into Lithuanian library law the function of public access to computers and internet only after we got this infrastructure. So that's one thing. Of course, when you have new things in the law, it's kind of easier to argue that this is something you should be supported, but otherwise you don't do the change from down. Another thing is that I worked at the Ministry of Culture for 6.5 years, and I've seen politicians in library conferences where they just show up in the beginning, say some nice words, and disappear. So, unless you are sure that it's also important, and it gives sometimes librarians an opportunity to communicate with them, but usually it's kind of hot discussions where librarians accuse politicians that they, don't listen, don't do that or this and so on, and it's not pleasant, of course. So instead of doing this, I would suggest develop more long-term relationship and visit those politicians, especially if you have, for example, foreign visitors who brings interesting cases. And for example, Deborah was visiting us, and we had meeting with President of Lithuania who was supportive of our project. But you should keep going, and it's never-ending process. You should develop and get recognition of libraries by those who are outside. And my colleague Stutis, who was managing the project Libraries for Innovation, is always saying, if they don't understand what we are doing, it's not their fault, it's our fault. Something we do wrong.
Yeah.
We don't communicate right and so on.
Oops, I'm sorry. Jessica, could you, besides ask us questions, but when we were doing the Aspen project, which is, maybe somebody can put up a link to that because it's good globally, but you heard a public official make a comment that you used to quote about supporting libraries.
Perception shifts. Yes. So I heard a municipal leader tell a librarian quite directly, don't ask me to change my perception of the library. You show me how the library is meeting community needs, and then I will change my perception of the library.
So it really fits with what Romania and all of you are saying.
Yeah. Can I add just one thing? The other thing that I want to just point out now, that librarians should know the broad scope of policies in their countries.
Yes.
To make really good point why libraries and how libraries can help. Folks, and I will give very, very simple example. IFLA and IFL just did this study on broadband policies and library roles in those policies. And what we find out that there are quite a bunch of policies where libraries' role are indicated. But for example, in Zambia, library sector librarians don't know that they are roles foreseen in the broadband policy for them. So what can you do if, how you can achieve change if librarians don't know that they are in the policy?
Yeah. Jessica, could you give us some questions and we'll move on to networking, and maybe Violetta can get her comment into that.
Well, actually, Violetta has a specific question from the audience to a request to talk about what's going on with library legislation in Moldova.
Yeah. So just wanted to say that the library law in Moldova is a pretty modern one, and it has been developed and approved in like 2017, 2018. And one of the library co-authors is as a participant in this panel, Eugenia. So if you want any advice on how to develop a good library law, you can ask her. And we also have benefited from support from Inga Lunden, because she provided us with various models on how the library law was functioning in Sweden. And indeed, when change happened at local level and when librarians started to, for example, to provide modern library services, but they were not reflected in the previous library law that was from 1990 and something, that change, drove, and all those evidence drove the changes into the library legislation, and as well as into modernizing, introducing the new concepts that were, that were foreign before into the library law. And also, going, for example, from introducing new concepts as modern library services, users need collections, especially that collections can be different, not only books, but games and robots and things like that. So indeed, you have what to reflect in new library law when you did have evidence and you can prove that. And I think that we were also talking about advocacy, and advocacy is also part of the legislative process and so on. It's very important for a librarian, but also for professionals, to understand that advocacy should be mutual advantageous. So when you go and ask for something, you need to be ready to offer something instead. Because what we have noticed in the beginning when we were just implementing the Novateka program, if librarians would go and ask local public authorities to provide them some additional money, but not providing anything, or not bringing the evidence that library can do something more for the community, that was not a win-win process. But when the librarians would go and say, I would need that because I can have more users, I can attract more children to the library and they will not stay in the streets. I can do that and I can do that and you can help that, and together we can build that community. That really worked well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you so much, Jessica.
No,
other questions?
Oh, no, there's just a lot of resources being shared right now, different library laws, and there is a good discussion about that link to sort of what advocacy you can do at the municipal or local level, and then how that supports national advocacy. And because sometimes you'll have either not a supportive minister of culture, no minister of culture, and that in some cases, alignment and agreement between your library association and the ministry in charge of libraries, and sometimes no agreement or alignment at all. So there's lots of examples, and people are giving each other a lot of support for when those situations are challenging.
Great. And Christine, I know 2 days ago at the 10 IFLA points workshop that you gave, there was some good advocacy links that IFLA's doing. Well, IFLA's always done incredible work on advocacy. It's one of its strengths going way back to when I first got involved, but you're really capturing things. If you could put a link up to that, that would be great. I want to move us to talking more overtly about networking. I want to start with a comment that we got from one of the young Africans who received some training and some opportunities to meet other people. Her name is Aggie, and she's from Zambia. And she said, regarding the continent, she says, "We have created unbreakable links on the continent, such that if we want something, information, on any African country or anything, my colleagues are just a WhatsApp call or a text away. Even if I don't have a number for someone, I know I can call on one of my friends that is in my network and they will lead me to the right person." And she's talking about how that's leading to webinars and with COVID, that people are not seeing each other in the same way they used to, but they're creating many more changes. And so what we thought we would talk about is if you could tell us some of your own experience yourself as being part of a network, or where your work in libraries benefited people being a part of an international network. Marie, you talked about that a little bit, and I think about how Next Library really changed from being more Nordic to being global.
Yes, and definitely Next Library has been a big part of changing our entire way of working and reaching out. But actually, I think that it's a good bridge from the advocacy to the network thing, because in my mindset, I think what all of us in this room learned, and many more people, is that coming together across national barriers is actually makes us stronger. So what I've found is that being engaged in different regional or international networks or advocacy programs. It can be in Europe. It would be a Bleeder. I'm the chair of PL 2030. That's also doing advocacy in Europe. Being part of IFLA. That's the kind of thing that strengthens your network, and it also strengthens your ability to advocate towards both your own politicians, but also on a more global or regional level. And I think that's super important. And I think I totally agree with the quote that you wrote, that you read, Deborah, because that's what happened to us, is that whenever we need inspiration for something, or we need someone to point us in the right direction, or even need to listen to someone who does something completely different of what we do, because that's often where we get the best inspiration, is by looking and sharing with someone who does things completely differently. And that I think the international networks can do, because we all do things differently. That's who we are as libraries. That's what we should do. But if we just reach to the neighbor city, it's not different enough. We need to sometimes reach really far to get that sparkling inspiration. And I think that's what the network does when we're working internationally. That's been a very big inspiration for us.
I think because you mentioned Inga Violetta, and I believe Inga's here, and June Garcia and Maya from Finland, many of people that were part of the network that made me who I am. And I know for sure that if I hadn't been part of what was once a network of library leaders from the Bertelsmann Institute, the Bertelsmann Foundation, I wouldn't be here today. And I think Marie probably wouldn't have been, because her boss was part of it. Many of us have been made who we are because of a network we were in at some point in our career. Christine, I've seen a lot of energy in your nodding. Would you like to share?
Well, yeah. Well, I completely agree. So the global libraries made me who I am. As I said, when I started this global libraries network, I had no idea what I'm up to. When my boss Armands asked me one day to come to his office and said, "No, we have this global libraries program. Can you be our impact assessment specialist?" I had no idea what to expect. But really, being this network, I've learned mountains. I've learned as I was doing, and it was, well, there is nothing like that. So and now also these days, I know that I can reach out to any of the impact evaluation specialists from that network. If I had a question or had a doubt or had needed a new idea, I can always do it at any time.
Yeah. And I think when you say global libraries, it's not about the money. It was never about the money. And that's what, I mean, the money helped make everything possible, of course, but it was always, and the money helped drive that impact, but it's about the network. You know, that's where we became who we are, is through the network and the opportunities. Anka, I can see you're wanting to say something.
My pile of things to You know, it's like when it comes to networking, I wanted to share with you that in Romania and probably in other Eastern countries, to be connected is not always seen as being a good thing. It's not a clean thing. To be connected, it means to be a little bit dirty of political things, and this can discourage librarians who are pure at heart and are not very much interested in money, but in having a better world. They can be a little bit reluctant to this networking concept, which makes, it actually makes miracles. Because, for example, we are now in Occupy Library. Occupy Library is only possible because we had, both me and Claudia and Ovidiu and the Progress Foundation, we had huge support from our network, a network that we built in time, that Gates Foundation helped us build. And we had this wonderful opportunity to offer 4 days conference with speakers that came pro bono for the love of librarians, because they do understand that we need this kind of things. We need this kind of contact. We need to create this kind of connections between us, which are clean connections because you use them for good, not for bad. Yes. So there's also this kind of cultural, background that influences some of our behaviors, and our purpose with this conference and with what we are trying to create is to take things aside, and create this safe environment for people to learn how to connect with each other, because it's a tremendous advantage for everybody, and in the end, it brings value in the communities. So a little bit of my pile, but I'm keeping it, the rest of it.
Yeah. Jessica, could you read us Inga's most recent comment? I think it really fits in.
Inga's most recent comment. Yes, indeed. Inga from Sweden says, meeting people from different cultures with different ideas makes you see that we have the same questions, but the answers differ. That's what makes the international network so rewarding, even for the local communities.
Yeah, I think we could all, I'd sing a lot of head nods. Jacek, were you wanting to
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this conference wouldn't be possible without this network. And I don't remember, it probably was Darren Herner who sent me emails like 3 years ago with information that he met someone who was promoting the idea of the learning circles and is looking for the opportunities to develop this concept and promote in Europe. And then I contacted Progress Foundation, and finally we have a Erasmus project on learning circles in the libraries. So it's like still, this network is still alive, and I have to say that for me professionally, it was the best experience in my life, and it still is. It's ongoing experience, I would say. But I want to say that I also consider you as a part of the network. So that means that the relationship between us, implementing organization and global libraries, was never like typical, between the donor and the implementing organization. For me, you were always like a part of network, someone who is like a partner more than kind of supervising something. And just let me bring another kind of memory. That once the IFLA Congress was held in Warsaw, not in Warsaw, in Wrocław in Poland, and that was my dream. And on the way to this Congress, suddenly a bus full of librarians from different African countries stopped in one small city. Yes, Ramona was there. Stopped, like in a small city in the suburbs of Warsaw. And for this city, it was like, huge kind of celebration. And they found someone who was speaking English to provide translation. It was very interesting conversation. And I still remember from this conversation that one of the differences between our culture and African culture, that their culture is more like oral culture, ours written culture. So for them, building libraries, it's kind of additional challenge, because what is written is usually written in the language of the former colonies. So there's a lot of similarities between us, but also it's interesting when you discover these differences and these challenges other people have to face. So that's my kind of personal and emotional contribution to the idea of networking.
Yeah. And Ramunya, can you just talk about, because I haven't noticed that we have anybody from the African continent here.
Oh, we've got Kenya. We've got Kenya.
I saw that. Yes, and all the.
And if anybody else from Africa,
yeah,
let us know you're here. We've got 70 people. We should know where everyone's from.
So Ramunya, though, you know, I read at the beginning from Aggie from Zambia, but I think that's one of the most amazing things is all the young librarians who have been reached and the change. Can you kind of global or continent-wise talk about that a little bit? Because those bus trips of yours really were pretty cool. I mean, I wasn't on one, but yeah.
Yeah, we called it mobile and conference bus that was visiting Lithuanian libraries and Polish libraries on the way to IFLA. And it was under initiative of young African library innovators. And here is Koi. I saw he is one of the yearly participants on a second year, I think 2018. You know what? We did it because there were many reasons. One of the reasons, I agree with this, my friends in this panel and probably all friends who are in the chat, that it gives international networking gives inspiration. It allows us to understand, you know, what we are doing and get some verification, especially if we are breaking things and doing new things, verification that, you know, we are on the good path, as well as to understand better how our conditions are different from, you know, other locations. This is very important to really do things right. And when working in African public library, with African public librarians, we just realized that there is no networking happening among those remote small libraries where, like in Latvia or Lithuania, you know, one or two librarians work. And even if they are even if they are library associations, usually public libraries are not part of those networks because they don't have sources, or, you know, academic libraries don't think about public libraries as something that should be part of networking and so on. And there are a lot of things that locally happen that would be interesting for others. So we decided to have this international learning, provide international learning opportunity, and to bring together, you know, African librarians, and also first we focused on emerging economy countries like Lithuania, Poland, and so on, and Indonesia, and so on. I think this what is missing in many library international networking. You know, we are looking into Sweden or UK or US that are kind of well off, and thinking that all good things are coming from there, but actually there's so much to learn from African young public librarians, their enthusiasm, and how they do things. So I think for international library community, I encourage to do more mixed conferences and mixed connections with developing and transition economy country librarians. And it's more difficult to find those because they don't speak English or there are other things, you know, but you know, there are treasures, believe me.
If I can just quickly jump in, because I want to support Ramunya's point. And just because I had this opportunity to work with AFUL in these capacity building programs and work with African librarians, and that's definitely one thing that I noticed. is because I can compare to my Latvian fellows, is that even with these scarce resources that have librarians in many African countries, the focus on the community and the community needs is sometimes bigger and stronger in Africa, and is something that many, I think, European librarians can learn from that.
And US. Jessica is going to have a question, but I do want to make a point just so that we can acknowledge. While you said that you were proud of the young librarians Romania, Koi said he's very proud of Eiffel, he's very proud of Eiffel, and we all are. Jessica, there was a really great question that I think we could.
Yes, that you guys can talk about. So as Deborah, as you kicked off the discussion, you referenced the fact that the Global Libraries program shut down 2 years ago. And so everybody who's on this panel hasn't had any funding from Gates since then. And yet this work is still connected and still going strong. So the question from our audience is, how are you all networking, sustaining, and carrying this forward? People would love to know, okay, since you're no longer funded, what are you doing to keep things going?
So Anka.
So for us, we were lucky enough to have some pillars of sustainability built within the program. So one way to network is the association of libraries, but another thing aside the project is it's a Progress Foundation. And we kind of took part of the things and tried to keep the work of global libraries, alive when it came to helping small libraries do innovative things. So I think, and we also do all the things that we can do to keep this networking alive, because we believe that this is actually the secret for innovation, for people to continue to push forward, because people tend to become tired. They need a support system. They tend to become blind dips. Mm-hmm. They need other people to tell them and exchange ideas with. So, and one thing that is also a comment on the discussion that was also before, for this kind of mixed, cultures and mixed levels conferences or meetings that I think are the best ones, because everybody can see very different perspectives and ways of doing things. Sometimes resources can be such a challenge. So if we can have more open or partially open conferences or places for also for because sometimes it's too expensive. It's just too expensive to be in the place where people go and network. And maybe this is a comment to take to some organizations that also have this kind of power of getting people together. So we are trying with this conference, to have
and you're doing a great job of it. You're doing a great job,
and we'll keep doing it. So yes,
because we're only have a few more minutes. I just want to remind people you can send a private message to any of the speakers if you have questions for follow-up. And Jacek, I could tell you had some fun.
Just a few words how we are doing now, because we are quite interesting case, because we are the Polish NGO, and we've been implementing program as a Polish NGO with kind of supported by Polish American Foundation, which is our main donor till now, and we are trying we are usually mobilizing about $1 million per year for the library still. And we get some money from the National Bank of Poland when we include our activities into the national policies. It's in this case, it's kind of financial education. We also get some money from corporations like Deutsche Telekom, Microsoft, and the thing is that we can prove that all experience we gained and all resources under the global libraries, now we use as our asset when we look for additional funding. So it's a kind of paradoxical situation because, as I said, we don't have like a good political climate for the strategies in Poland, but still in the local governments they value very much the role of the libraries. It's definitely growing awareness of the role of the libraries, and there's a lot of investment from local government for the libraries. So when the COVID started, a lot of the libraries, they were closed and there was lockdown. But they started to offer online education for citizens that were cut from some regular services. So like in order to get a prescription, you have to have a contact with your doctor.
I think you have to take it. Okay.
Yeah, okay. That's basically we are doing very, very well, still supporting libraries.
Maria, I know you wrote something, and I don't know if you want to talk about it or it's relevant. I'm not really reading it all.
No, well, yeah, I wanted to support what Ramona was saying is, and also it touched upon what we're just discussing now is how do we move when there is not move forward without a financial support from global libraries, and some of the things that we've noticed is that we shouldn't be so humble in terms of we should acknowledge the impact that we have ourselves. And what we found after we were so happy that global libraries supported scholarships coming to Next Library, and that created a total difference from both for the people coming there, for our collaboration with IFL, and also for the conference and the people there. But what happened after global libraries closed down, we decided that this was still something that we needed to do, and so first we worked with IFL to see how could we make that happen, and IFL put in some power as well. And now that we're sharing Next Library with other countries, this is something that we ask them to do when they're putting up a Next Library conference. And so what we found is that having that, I think Eppo van Nispen said it this morning, he said, or earlier today, so sometimes you just need to put something on the highest shelf and reach for it, because if you do not start at the highest shelf, like all the way up to the top, you don't get anywhere. So, and I think that's we should know that once we set our minds to do that, it can actually happen, and there are tons of different ways of doing it. It's not as easy as if we had tons of money, but it's really about the vision to reach for the stars. That's what we found when we're working on this.
I just see that our president of IFLA, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and she's here with us. And so I don't know if there was anything. Yeah, I didn't see what she said, but I was like, what?
Christine chimed in to say, quote, each of us is responsible to keep our connections alive. It's as simple as staying in touch via social media, and that can make a difference. And there was a lot of here. Yes, you're absolutely right. That's such a good point, Christine.
Thank you, Chris. And also, Chris is giving the keynote tomorrow morning. I should be as brave as she is and try to stay up for her at 3 o'clock in the morning in Seattle. But Chris, I was wanting to make that comment too. When well, we know with our Bertelsmann alumni that we have monthly phone calls now, and we now see each other, and some of us lost touch for a decade. But when Jessica and I started working on that chapter for TON, we began asking for calls with some of you, and we both felt like, at least I can speak for myself, I felt like my days were lifted by having those conversations. And it's really, I don't need to have to write another darn chapter for a book to make those connections. And so I'm really glad you mentioned that, Chris. We're down to 10 minutes. Jessica, are there more questions? I think. Did Despina just ask something?
She asked us if we could keep doing this more often, which is ironic because it just came after the point about everybody can reach out at any time and connect, and does it. and should really feel that everybody on this panel or people that they know is part of their network and just make things happen. I think yeah, go ahead.
Can I just jump back to this question about the funding? So IFL actually still have funds from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we were probably very lucky to get one of the last funding from Global Libraries. But you know what we do? We actually stretch every dollar with all opportunities. First of all, we ask our partner libraries and partner countries to chip in, co-fund all our activities. We, as Marie said, you know, we found, and actually we worked probably with all panel people in different positions and pulled resources and did all kinds of things. And this really helps to keep, you know, and invest our time and also get all kinds of knowledge into our work. We would not be able to do this without support from our good friends and colleagues. And also, of course, we fundraised, and here is my cat. He is feeling
Thank you. Yeah, and I
fundraised.
I mean, one thing that I heard Jacek say was when you got money from the Polish bank, and that's also a place where, you know, as Marie said, sometimes we won't be humble. We need to be bold and ask. Jessica, you're getting a bunch of questions now that we have about 6 minutes left.
Well, I'm getting a really important question about, you know, what is a library going to look like post COVID-19? And that idea of, it came up earlier that one of the reasons libraries have been so successful helping during a time of crisis is they've been able to provide virtual services and have really quickly pivoted virtually. But part of the role of a library is a place where people can meet in person and where you have the opportunity to bring different groups physically together. So, you know, I think nobody knows what the world will look like post-COVID, but the panel or the audience would love to hear from the panel sort of what some of the thinking is on the future of libraries in hopefully post-global pandemic.
Hey, just one sentence about that, because I fully believe Bill Gates when he says that pandemic will be still with us until the end of the next year, and we are planning activities according to that. And this is exactly the situation when you have challenges and you have opportunities. Challenges to help libraries to become more online in terms of their internal procedures and in terms of the services. But at the same time, and this is also reflected in the research I mentioned, that the librarians see this as an opportunity, because that's the situation where people are really interested in getting additional digital competences. And it's the opportunity to show library, to the local governments as an institution that is exactly a solution for this problem that we have now. So I would say that this is difficult, but at the same time interesting, and may bring us to some new model library that we have to discover during the process, because we don't know exact results of the COVID on any aspect of the social life.
Mm. I want to mention, I know Fernando was talking about how countries, not just poor countries, but transitioning countries. And I do know that IFLA with their new work for governance is really looking at Latin America and is hoping to continue to build on programs that are already there and keep that network going. And I would say, link into IFLA and see what's next. Jessica,
can I just jump in on that, please, Deborah? Please. Just because I'm thinking there could also be a non-formal way of doing it. When I look in this room and all the people that I've met through the international networks, everybody is eager to share. and eager to help someone else. And during this crisis, what we found was that everybody's reaching out towards each other and trying to learn from how we are all dealing with this. And so I'm thinking that when Fernando, you write that we need strong collaborations and mentors, I think we need to be better at looking at each other as mentors and potential collaborators, because I've had so many great people reaching out during this crisis. I've been reaching out to so many different people saying, hey, could we have a talk about how it's going? What are you doing at the moment? How are you dealing with this and this? And sometimes we come together as a group and have a joint discussion. But and that's what we do, that's what we can do. And I think that's coming back to one of the questions you asked, Deborah, what is the impact of international network? I think that's exactly that, is that we become each other's mentors, and we shouldn't be shy reaching out and ask for that mentorship, or just simply a ping pong conversation about what it is that we could do better, or what other people are doing. And I think that's what international network really taught me during these years.
And Marie, I was writing to somebody about you, as you know, a couple of weeks ago, and I just want to finish, and just that you can switch that relationship too. So you are now my mentor, and tables are turning, and I think that's one of the beauties of all of this too. Violetta, please jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that librarians have always been on the way to reinvent themselves. That has been all the time, and they have been reinventing, and adapting to different circumstances. And that has been really rewarding to see Moldovan local librarians, how they have been adapting during COVID times, and also now once there were the lockdown, and now that we have some lifting of the measures, they continue to readapt, and they continue to find out ways on how to reach out to library users and continue to reinvent. And that's important, to keep this spirit all the time up of reinventing and finding ways, as well as life. And while you have a source of inspiration, and you have a well of ideas that you can borrow, like for money when you borrow an idea, when you are in a librarian community, and so on. And that is really important, networking, partnerships, and constant inventing.
That is a great quote to end this with, Violetta. Nobody asks for money when you borrow an idea. Thank you for that. Anka, I don't know if we can just keep talking. Anka, can we just keep talking, or are we going to get cut off in 1 minute?
Talking, but I will do my host, I'm putting the other hat, it's the hat day today, and I will tell you that in 1 minute on the stage we will have our keynote speaker on the stage, so probably people will also want to see that. But we can keep talking. I just have to do the technical part. It was so nice to have you here, or to have me here. I don't know what my role is in this panel anymore.
Well, I think we don't want to keep people from the keynote speaker, and also I know the expo is filled with many great opportunities. Christine, do you have another booth at the expo? Can we come talk to IFLA? Because IFLA's doing a lot of things that the questions are asking. Do you have another panel? Another?
Not a planned one, not one that is on the agenda, but I'll be there today and tomorrow at some point.
Great.
But also I received a question in my private chat, the private message. So if there is anything you want to ask, you can do that. It works. I'll go and answer them.
Good. Thanks. Good. And any last comments, last words?
Just lots of love from the chat for the cat.
The cat is the panel.
Yeah, that's what I planned.
In Polish tradition, black cat means be careful.
What did you say, Jacek?
Yeah. In the Polish tradition, the black cat is a symbol of problems.
That's COVID-19, you know.
I just want to say the same as Christine. If anyone, I would love if someone wanted to read out. I would be happy to have conversations or just share ideas. That's something we always learn from in Aarhus and me personally as well. So that would be I'd be happy to.
Yeah. I want to also Jacek made a comment, and Despina, who works with IFLA, is here, but Jacek said people should look to what Greece did in 2008 and the way they stood up to that crisis that we were going through to learn from that. So I want to push people to talk with Despina and other Greek leaders. Anybody else? Violetta, is there something?
No, thank you. Just was great to take part in this panel.
Yeah, I just, on post-19, COVID-19 libraries, I think pandemic brought us very strong argument for advocacy for better digital infrastructure skills for librarians, because in this world, post-COVID world, we can become really an important infrastructure for emergency digital infrastructure that is needed to help with education, with learning, with all health information, and so on. And also brought some issues like copyright restrictions for digital sources and so on. And that's, I think we should not lose this focus on those issues. If we will not find solutions together, there's no good future for our global community.
I want to thank you for that comment. I want to thank everybody for discussing. I think we might have just gotten even more energy from all the energy that the chat has brought to us, and so maybe we'll have to come to the next Occupy Anka if you want us. And Jessica, you've had the pleasure of being with the Global Libraries program for longer than anybody in the world, but you also have seen all the chats. Could you close our session for us?
Oh, sure, I'd love to, because I think the spirit of the chat matched the faces that we saw on the screen with an absolute commitment to raising honestly some of the challenges that each country is facing. Some of them are political, some of them are health related, some of them are funding. But I'm going to go with Chris McKenzie again with a final word of let's work together.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, all of you.